Mazda just shocked North America. They released their new CX-70 and it made headlines, but not the kind that any company should want, and it brings up some other concerns with the lineup. Still, Mazda defies the odds. Despite criticism for seemingly goofy decisions, Mazda recorded their best sales year ever in 2023.
It's like they tripped and fell down a flight of stairs and the resulting injury was a stronger jawline.
And to celebrate their success, they cut costs. For a while, they've teased the CX-70. They told us it would be a two-row crossover, and we assumed that it would be a true midsizer. Instead, we got the hefty CX-90 without the versatility of a third row. Oh, and some new vents and red leather. It seemed like Mazda made way too big of a deal about the CX-70 for it to be so insignificant. Many were speculating that this would be a similar vehicle to the CX-60 overseas, which uses the same refined turbocharged inline-six along with the premium rear-biased architecture, but in a more compact size for people that don't need three-row versatility. So why didn't we get that? Well, chances are they were trying to trim down their budget. So the CX-60 may already exist, but it would have to be put through new certifications and testing for the North American market, whereas the CX-90 has already done all of that. And while it seems like I'm pessimistic here, I'm sure the CX-70 will be a good car because the CX-90 is a competent crossover. Not only does it have that silky powertrain, it also takes Mazda a step further in the premium direction without incurring a higher price than its competition. It's comfortable enough, it handles really well for its size, and for such a practical vehicle, it does have character.
While making the CX-70 its own model appears to be foolish, it makes a little sense given the context of the CX-90's trim ladder, which is already more saturated than Subway restaurant locations.
Instead of doing it like Audi, for instance, where you have different trims and then different powertrains available for the same trims, this, you kind of just continue to climb the ladder as you upgrade the powertrains, which can be confusing. So if you were to then add in a 5-seat version, it would make matters even worse.
And when compared to other two-row SUVs, cargo capacity should be strong.
And there's also more storage underneath the floor where the third row would have been. And while it will likely behave very similar to the CX-90, there's the option for them to tweak the suspension and steering. But now moving into the downsides for this, I think the most obvious one is that if you wanted a two-row CX-90, you could just buy a CX-90 and fold down the third row.
And I also don't see many people wanting a crossover this hefty without that capability. This is a full foot longer and 500 pounds heavier than something like a Honda Passport. I'm sure it will be a well-rounded product, but I'm not sure it needs to exist, no matter what they call it.
And this is not the only left-field decision that the brand has made as of late.
Briefly, if you're looking for a new Mazda, let me recommend the friendly people over at Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana, the small, well-established dealer that has let me test drive countless new and used cars to make videos like this possible.
Moving beyond the CX-70 debacle, I want to talk about the CX-90's success. While it's by no means become a sales juggernaut, initially it has outpaced the outgoing CX-9. Something that I'm happy to hear because Mazda did put a lot of effort into this product. Now, the reason why I think there's some controversy around the CX-90 is that even though three-row crossovers are pretty hot, this is a niche one. They truly made a premium push, and that came at the sacrifice of size. So this is a giant vehicle that really doesn't have any more passenger volume or cargo space than many of its competitors. The storage and feature set on the inside also isn't as maybe family friendly as some of its closest rivals, unless you begin to compare it to your Audis and Mercedes, Volvos, those kinds of things. But at that point, it's wearing a Mazda badge, which is something that they have to overcome. So I think this is a great SUV, and I would recommend most people shopping in this segment to at least check one out. It is fighting an uphill battle. And the next thing that was a little bit more puzzling was the introduction of the CX-50. Now, many brands do have a few two-row SUVs, but the CX-50 is shockingly close in size and price to the CX-5. In fact, it had the potential to even replace its sibling, the CX-50, adds a much needed larger back seat and a more rugged appeal. Things that people tend to look for in the compact crossover market and things that the CX-5 doesn't really offer. However, the CX-50 doesn't handle quite as well. It also has worse visibility, and after comparing them side by side, less attention to detail. But that's just my opinion. What do the sales have to say? Surprisingly, there's not really any cannibalization going on. The CX-5 sales have remained consistent, and the CX-50 has carved out its own little niche in the compact crossover market. And now, after seeing how much larger the CX-70 is than either of those cars, I think it would be completely moronic for Mazda to kill off the CX-5.
Because that's the car that best appeals to Mazda's audience. The CX-5 makes up 42% of all Mazda sales in the United States. So if anything, I'd expect a redesign in the next year or two, unless the brand has a similar successor in mind.
And the next thing that would make you think that their sales would drop are the price increases of the CX-30 and Mazda 3, especially the latter there. Now, the 3 is sort of clinging to life right now. The reason why, it's priced very similar to the CX-30, which comes with all-wheel drive as standard.
A little more cargo space and additional ground clearance.
Most people, when given the choice, are going to go crossover over hatchback or sedan, especially when they don't have to pay more. It just doesn't offer the same financial proposition that it used to. And that is after the CX-30's base price took a huge jump, which was also kind of perplexing because we didn't really get any more features. It wasn't a redesign. They just realized, oh my gosh, we're undercutting the competition by too much. Still, for the money, it's a well-handling, upscale, reliable car, which is why I think Mazda has been doing so good as of late in spite of all of their wacky decisions.
After getting the chance to drive much of the brand's direct competition, there are many cars that seem more up to the times. Vehicles that have conformed to what is generally considered desirable. Soft suspensions to handle our crumbling infrastructure, CVTs to maximize efficiency, big screens to make our passengers gawk, off-road trims to convince us we're adventurous, and maximum versatility to take all of our stuff along for the ride. None of these attributes are inherently wrong. Each one has its purpose, and if you combine all of them together, you'd have a hit crossover. It only becomes disappointing when each brand has the same goal in mind. That's why I find Mazda's analog, driver-focused approach to be refreshing. Outside of the MX-5, I don't think any of their cars are necessarily the best in class. However, as more of the competition leans into the trends, I think more people will find Mazda as a safe haven so long as they stick to their principles. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like to help me take on the maniacal YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff. And consider becoming a member where you will receive an exclusive podcast among other perks. I'll catch you in the next one.